like, this is one of the competition which actually creates a very great segue, which actually makes them understand both the sets of industry, automotive, where you actually understand the brakes, the accelerator, and the suspension system, and all of that. And then also the solar energy side of it, which actually gives them an entire whole sector of innovation that lies ahead of them. But then now this startup has now come up with 2-in-1, which is now you don't really have to use two separate devices, but you can actually combine both of that. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that the team Hyperion will know that how exactly the efficiency plays a major role in actually, when you're using solar panels to any concept, right? They can't, they try to actually underestimate it. But the major point of the greenhouse emission is not the transportation sector, it's not the automotive sector. Okay, so it's actually the electricity and the heat.
I feel extremely honored to introduce today's chief guest, Mr. Sundar Iyer, sir, who currently is a senior research associate in allied Techno Groups. He brings with himself rich experience, having worked at forefront of technology revolution in USA with Volvo and Honda for 7 years. Before completing his master's from Rochester University, USA, an accomplished industry expert, he is an automotive enthusiast to the core. He's an amazing person with outstanding work experience. He worked at Honda R&D USA as a crash test engineer and worked on the fields like rapid prototyping, crash test designing, modeling simulation, suspension design, DM simulation, joint strength calculation, device supplier integration, and crash test analysis, in which he has used Visual Crash Studio software for analysis. He also worked at Volvo CE USA as a design engineer, in which he had used CAD modeling software Cryo to design, prototype, document, and validate a variety of projects with total annual cost saving achieved per project is $100,000. Now, I would like to call our today's chief guest, Sundar Iyer, sir, for guiding our students and give a short info about current industry scenario, future of solar and energy system, future of industry, and career for engineers in solar sector.
Thanks a lot, Rahul, for the wonderful introduction about myself. I couldn't have done it better. And thanks a lot for the team, Hyperion, and the college for inviting me for this wonderful event. So I'll just try to briefly introduce about what I'm currently doing along with the Techno Groups. So I am a senior research associate, and I'm actually helping them. So we actually create content for the automotive, especially in the vehicle dynamics and also electric vehicles right now. And we also plan to actually launch courses on autonomous vehicles as well. And so what we do is essentially to train the students for that. And what my side passion is actually to understand and trying to see if there is a business model that can be implemented into the solar energy platform. The opportunities are there in India, which is immense in the applications of solar. Like solar industry itself has got a huge applications, but then where exactly can you use solar as a secondary mode for different industry? That is something which is an upcoming industry. So I'll try to actually make you go through those areas as well and try to see how we can connect the dots of the opportunities that lies forward, and then try to connect it to the automotive industry, which is what you guys are doing, and then we can conclude the session. So that is going to be the agenda of today's session. And solar industry and the opportunities that are there in the solar sector. So that is precisely what's going to be the topic of today. So the contents, like I said, it's going to start with what exactly is the global warming and the solar industry, the current market of solar, future of the solar industry, and the opportunities that lies for an engineer who is in either in mechanical or in the electrical spectrum, and specifically into the microelectronics part of it. And then the government policies that actually are helping in creating this new surge in the solar demand, and then trying to see possible applications of the solar sector. Okay. So global warming. So this is just to recap, and I'm pretty sure that you must have actually seen, but I want to actually highlight a few things on what actually captivated the entire global scenario to channelize towards using green emissions or green resources for last 20 years, if you actually see. So since I would say the start of this century, that is from 2000, 2001, China became forefront when it comes to the World Trade Organization. And global market got themselves into the into the Chinese market because of cheap labor. So starting from 2001 is when Chinese market and the Chinese economy took off. And then since that part, the environmental situation started going from bad to worse and then worsening again. So what has happened is because of the sudden boost in economy of, I would say, 1.5 billion people in China and then 1.3 billion people in India. So every person wants to buy a car, a bike, or a motorcycle. Then what happens is the emissions that comes from there also started going up exponentially after that, to a level where it's gone to a level where it's unsustainable for us to actually continue with the same pace. Right, so that is when the Paris Treaty, and I'll talk about a few things about that. But that's when they actually had to sign a deal saying that, okay, so we'll have to probably take measures of how to actually contain that emissions and try to make sure that the vehicles are, or the carbon dioxide emissions are actually kept on curb. So the most this is something which people actually try to they can't they try to actually underestimate it. But the major point of the greenhouse emission is not the transportation sector, it's not the automotive sector. Okay, so it's actually the electricity and the heat. Okay, the coal and the electricity that is actually generated, and what are the means that they use to actually generate that electricity is one of the major contributing factor for the emissions, for the gas emission. Okay. Now, let's take a step back and now try to understand, okay, so what exactly are happening in India right now to actually curb that. So starting from 2010, government started taking immense amount of efforts to actually try to captivate on two major sectors to go for the top two greenhouse emissions, which is the electric vehicles, which is the electricity, and then the automotive carbon dioxide. So what they try to do is they try to actually take the automotive, and they came out with FAME 1. And they came out with FAME 2 for the electric vehicles. So for the electric vehicles in 2010, they started coming out with those emissions. But then for something which is not so well known amongst the students is on the same year, the government of India also came out with the electricity for using renewable energy. But one thing which you can see is the electricity generation, because of renewable energy, starting from 2016, mid of this decade, has been actually constantly going up to a level where in last 4 years, in last almost 5 years, the amount of electricity that is generated using the renewable energy has actually doubled from 65 gigawatt billion unit to about 127 billion unit. So the doubling has happened in last 5 years. And right now the target of India is to actually double in 2 years and then double 2 years after that. So that's the level which they are actually trying to achieve it in next 5 years. But what they are actually trying to concentrate on is the potential opportunities. Okay, so because I always try to say that don't look into the absolute number, but look into the rate of change. Okay, because so I'm a student of economics and I've been actually practicing macroeconomics and microeconomics for last 4 years. So what I would say is if there is a number which is 1 million, let's say, and then if it actually you are saying that it's going to grow to 2 million, you actually say that there's an absolute increase of 1 million units, right? But then that's just double. But then if there is one number which is 5,000 and your target is 1 lakh, okay, so that is 20 times increase. So the rate of change is 20x to the initial level. So the growth proportions to that also grows up 20%, 20x to the initial level. So the solar power, what they've generated right now is 34 gigawatt hours, right? Gigawatt of solar energy. But then if actually take a step back on what are the possible opportunities of how much solar energy can you actually generate in India, we'll actually try to put through the next following slides. So 34 is what we have right now, and then we'll try to prove it on what is the amount that is actually capable of harnessing in the solar panels perspective. So the amount is nothing less than about 15x to the current level. So what exactly is the Indian solar energy market or renewable energy market? So India right now is fifth when it comes to installed capacity in renewable energy. Okay, so out of someone who has just started in 2009-10, okay, so before 9 and 10, India was nowhere in the picture that comes into a level which actually catches any country's notice. Right, but right now India is fifth largest when it comes to capacity of solar energy or renewable energy that are actually captivated. Okay, so now take a step back. Out of the 180 2 countries which are actually officially recognized in UN, India is now in top 5. That too in an industry which they started concentrating on, I would say last 10, 12 years ago. So that is the level which they are planning to achieve. And now to give you a perspective that what is the secondary market which I'm planning to actually see it grow, because I'm also kind of like a startup investor. So I want to see how exactly the things actually work in the future, and what are the possible sectors that are going to actually grow around the main sector. Okay, for example, if you actually would have invested in Apple stock, okay, in an Apple stock in year 2000, the amount of growth, or in 2009 when the iPhone was launched, a couple of years iPhone was launched, if you would have invested in an Apple stock, okay, the amount of growth which you would have seen, but instead of that, if you would have invested in, let's say, a microelectronics company or a chip company, or let's say the touch surface, so the company that makes the touch surface glass, if you'd have invested in those peripheral industry, that also grows along with the main mobile phone industry, right? So if you'd have invested in that, you would have made 4 to 5 times more, right? So solar for the energy is the main thing, right? But what I actually see a potential difference that are going to happen, especially which actually became very evident starting this year's lockdown, is, and so there are 2 types of solar, and I'll try to actually give you more information on that. But if you actually try to understand how exactly solar power is actually used, right? So it's basic physics. Heat falls, right, or light falls, and then it converts that into electricity, and then you use that electricity to power it. But how exactly it happens is something called as we have something called as a net metering, where you don't directly use it to power the device, okay, at least in the commercial sense. We call it as something called as a net metering, where you actually send the electricity that is generated back to the grid. So you have a meter that reads the input that you're using and the output that you're actually giving it to the grid. Okay, and your electricity bill is going to be the difference of these two, right? So information about how exactly the system works, and especially when you are now trying to get into the automotive sector, right? This becomes a deadly combination for any applications in India, let's say next 10 years, because those are the potential huge opportunities and government policies that have come out, which are going to activate on that. So now what the target of India is to actually have 100 gigawatt of solar power by 2020. This is what I said. So we have roughly about 38 gigawatts that have been generated in 2019 fiscal year. So in 3 years, we are planning to have about 2.5 times the increase in the total capacity of energy that is generated. Zero import duty on all the raw materials, and we also have zero interest rates and priority sector lending. Okay. So now what exactly we want you guys to think about is, okay, so now how we can channelize on. And I'm pretty sure that many of the students who are attending are from the electrical side, right? So electrical, you guys have probably, I would say, an opportunity of a lifetime if you guys are planning to do something in India, because of 2 main reasons. So if you take a step back, and what has happened in last 6 months in India is, India basically actually stopped all the imports that are coming from China. Okay, and they want to have the Atmanirbhar Bharat and all of that concept, right? Even though it will take a couple of years, but let's just say what is happening in the sidelines. Okay, so that is more important. So majority of almost 85% of the solar cells, okay, come from China. Okay, and what the companies do is they import the solar cells and they assemble it together. They create solar panels. Okay, so the main microelectronics technology, right, that is actually coming from China. And all we do is just assemble everything together to create a panels of solar, right? But now, if we are going to now stop the import, and I would say that India's last 8 years of solar boom was actually helped because of China's cheap technology. Okay, so China's cheap access to the solar sheets was something which actually helped India in creating that boom. But now what it's going to do right now is India is going to have a toxic mixture of both. There is a boom, there's a demand, okay, and then the supply of the solar cells are not going to be coming from China. It's actually going to be manufactured in India, which means that India is now starting to develop microelectronics. Okay, and what exactly microelectronics are going to be helped in, right? Solar panels. cell phone manufacturing, okay, the chips that go into the cell phone manufacturing, supercomputers, cheaper laptops, right? So now what, if you actually have read newspaper any time in last 2 months, what you've seen is Apple's one of the biggest suppliers trying to set up their plants in India, right? And the South Korean company, which was based in China, is now planning to move their plant in India. What that does is, even though that's a plant that is creating components, but that is going to force India to develop the microelectronics technology, right? And that microelectronics technology is going to help, okay, in developing the entire sector. Okay? So India is always what we call it as a leapfrog nation. When world was in the pager, we never had cell phone. When world left of pager, we directly adopted the next technology. Okay? When world was in 3G, we just left out 3G, we went from 2G to 4G. So we always are known for what we call it as a leapfrog nation. We actually miss out an intermediate technology, we directly jump to the next technology, right? So this is what is happening simultaneously as we speak, that this development in the microelectronics, and then the demand for solar panels, and then the government's push for renewable energy. And then the next part is what I'll be explaining is going to be how its applications in the automotive sector is going to create a snowball effect. Okay. So this is the solar energy potential which I was talking about. So the amount of solar energy which can be generated in India, okay, with all the landscape and everything, is almost 750. Okay. And just to give you a perspective, the amount that we generated last year was 37 gigawatt. Okay. And so that is almost 20 times, 20x the amount of solar energy that India is capable of generating. Okay. This is assuming we are actually creating solar panels with the same efficiency. Okay. And I'm pretty sure that the team Hyperion would know that how exactly the efficiency plays a major role in actually, when you're using solar panels to any concept, right? So microelectronics, so one of my friend, he also did his master's in Rochester, and his area of specialty was microelectronics, but more into improving the efficiency of the solar wafers. Okay. What is the manufacturing method that you need to do onto your solar panels so that your efficiency, output efficiency actually goes up? So instead of it being 15 or 17%, how can I now capture 20 or 22%? What are the things that I need to put in the manufacturing method so that I can have a more efficiency? Okay. So this is assuming that we are actually currently using the same efficiency. Okay, so 750, so that's a 20x of the level that is going to come up. So now these are the government initiatives and policies. And I'm not going to go into very much detail, but this is something which you can actually look into any government websites out there. Okay, but majorly, more than $42 billion of investment is actually there in the Indian government energy sector since 2014. Okay, and so I don't know if anyone is aware of this website, but it's a great website if anyone wants to just explore. It's called investindia.gov.in. Yes, I think that's the website if I'm not wrong. So it's investindia.gov.in. So that's all the investment projects, infrastructure projects, and real estate projects, solar, renewable energy projects, automotive projects, all the projects that you can think of, okay, which are going to be bid by the government is actually there. Okay? And you can actually see the amount of projects which are there in the renewable energy department. Okay? You'll be actually shocked by the amount of projects because, and there are two things which actually happen simultaneously now. So there's a big solar panel infrastructure, which are creating massive solar farms, right? But then there are small solar panels demand where, and that is again the periphery industry for the highway department. So when India's highway department grows, right? The street lights now, you would have noticed all the street lights are now powered by solar panels, right? So now what that does is it actually creates a peripheral industry. So as the highway department grows, the subsidiary department are going to be the solar panels, the solar lights, and all of that actually goes along with the highway development. Okay? So you can actually try to now join the dots of what is the first solar panel demand, then the secondary and periphery industries where solar power is actually one of the applications of that. Okay, so that is one place where you can look into for the potential outcomes of the solar panels. So one of the applications is, if anyone is keeping an awareness on, is he actually gets to know that electric powered vehicle is probably where the government is pushing themselves to. So one of the applications which the government is now trying to do is combining solar and the electric vehicle boost, okay, where you can actually now try to create a business model where you can actually try to use the solar panels the electricity that's generated from the solar panels to charge your electric vehicles. Okay? And this is something which, again, the government did. One of the farm policies of, I think, June of this year was any agricultural land which doesn't have any cultivable part. Okay? They could use solar power to actually power their solar pump and stuff like that. And they could export the rest to the government and they can earn a passive income out of that. Okay? Again, a tremendous boost for the solar and the solar equipments that comes with it. And the third application is the rooftop solar, which is where I'm concentrating in. And the last one is where I think you guys, in case if anyone is interested in, and I think the team is also probably one of the applications of that is one of the potential automotive companies, what they're actually trying to see is if they could use solar panels to actually generate electricity to actually electrify one of the subsidiary components inside the automotive. Okay. So I am pretty sure that everyone would have noticed something called as an automotive thermoelectric generator. Okay. So thermoelectric generator is where the heat energy is converted to electrical energy. Future technologies. So one of the future technologies which I said, so one aspect is this, and I'll just try to explain to you in brief. So what exactly this is. So this is actually created by a startup in Hyderabad, and it's founded by an IIT. So I went and met these founders, and this is probably the only device probably in India and one of very few in the world, which is capable of using both solar water heater and solar electricity generator. Okay, both they have the same system. Okay, so there you have a cold water in, and by the time it comes out, you get a hot water, and this also has an inbuilt solar panels, which creates an electrical energy. So it's a built-in two-in-one. Okay, so you remember the things which I said that all the apartments are going to be used solar water heaters, which are highly inefficient. Okay, and now we have to now literally come up and try to utilize the remaining space to put our solar panels, or try to remove the solar water heater and then put the solar panels in. But then now this startup has now come up with two-in-one, which is now you don't really have to use two separate devices, but you can actually combine both of that, which actually creates hot water to all the houses and also saves electricity energy for the entire building. So this is again one of the startups, and the startup's name is called Bird's Eye Energy. So you guys can look into that, and so the founders are pretty good, and so this is one of the startups, one of the future technologies, which it's still in the very earlier ideation stage, but this is where you guys can actually broaden up your thought process and go into. So this is where I would say the combination of the applications of solar, but then combining the automotive sector as well. And I'm sorry, guys. I mean, this is the only good image which I could find in a hurry from your Facebook. So I think you guys are in INFINITI 5.0. But this is something which I found from your Facebook, which is INFINITI 2.0. So I'm sorry for that. So yeah, and one of the applications, one of the applications of solar and then combining with automotive actually creates a very deadly combination of national solar vehicle challenge, where you are now planning to learn the automotive side of it, the accelerator, the brakes, and all of that, and now but a totally different powering mechanism, which is a solar. Okay. And I'm pretty sure that the team would agree to it that almost I would say 70% of the way this vehicle works is very similar to how an electric vehicle works. Okay. The only difference is going to be what is the powering mechanism. Okay. So in an electric vehicle, the powering mechanism is from a battery, right? And here it's going to be, so electrical energy is not coming from the battery, but it's actually coming from the solar panel. So that's one of the major difference. But apart from that, anyone who's actually interested in getting into the electrical vehicle side of it, but he wants to know, okay, how exactly am I supposed to now size my motor controller? How exactly am I supposed to do that? How exactly can I now transfer the energy from one component to another, electrical energy? So for someone who's interested in doing all of that, he can actually, this is one of the competition which actually creates a very great segue, which actually makes them understand both the sets of industry, automotive, where you actually understand the brakes, the accelerator, and the suspension system and all of that. And then also the solar energy side of it, which actually gives them an entire whole sector of innovation that lies ahead of them, right? So this is one of the applications which now most of the countries they started developing. So I remember Rochester, my team was also part of one of the solar vehicle challenge. And so now this is also gaining popularity, where they're trying to see if, forget about running an entire vehicle with solar, because that is too much amount of energy that is required. But then what in case if I'm able to power a small component of a vehicle? So the concept which I said. So if someone is able to compete here, and if he's able to now come up with an innovative technology which actually boosts the energy or improves the efficiency, stuff like that, then they could probably try to use the same capital infrastructure, but then try to just channelize into powering some small component in an actual car. Okay, so that is something which has a massive applications going forward. So this is about what this team does and what exactly the entire National Solar Vehicle Challenge does. Okay, so once you have understood what is the potential of the solar energy and how exactly the panels are manufactured, and what exactly is the potential that lies in ahead of us, say in next 5 years and 10 years, if in India, right? So what exactly we do at Techno Groups, I'll just mention a couple of slides and then we can probably close today's session. So what we do about in Techno Groups is just we have types with about 400. We have clients in 400 colleges, and we try to actually bridge the gap between the colleges and the industry. Okay? So what is the industry's expectations and what exactly is the college's expectations or college's level of education? So we try to actually bridge that gap in a lot of colleges, and we try to actually do a lot of research of how we can now try to upskill the students and make them participate in competitions like this and IC bar and Formula and stuff like that. So with that, I would like to thank Rahul and everyone in the team Hyperion for once again for giving me an opportunity, and also college for giving me a wonderful platform to interact with all of you. Because one of the most, I would say, underappreciated sector in among the students is the solar energy sector. So this is something which I would say that this is a great efforts from you guys to actually educate the students of what the potential opportunity lies forward, so that they're at least aware about what can be done and how exactly can they try to improve their skills for the potential opportunities that lies forward.